Hey everybody, this is Perch. Here's a viewer with a different perspective, and that's I like people who are coming with a different angle on a lot of this stuff because it's good food for thought. It worries me a little bit. And this is, I think people. I'm watching more and more people increasingly fearful of hearing alternate opinions to what they believe, and it doesn't really matter whether you're on the right, whether you're on the left. I think people have been talking for a long time around, not a long time, the last couple of years, this idea of like, well, the left can't hear any arguments, and they quickly call you a Nazi, and that's been a storyline you've heard for a while. In some cases, it is true. There is this knee jerk reaction to call disagreement, a threat to democracy, and you blend that in with what actual threats of democracy is. Somebody questioning something is not a threat to democracy. It's a question. But I've seen it more on the right lately too, and I'm just it feels like this is something that everybody is getting to, and it feels increasingly like we're getting this need to say, I'm whatever opinion's being stated, I won't hear the opposite of it, and I'm going to block, and I'm going to put up walls, and I'm just not going to listen. And I think there's so much that gets taken away in that world. The value is often created through merging ideas together and to testing and hammering your ideas. It's why in the science method, you test your theories. You don't just go, I've got a theory, and this medicine here is perfect. I don't need to test it. And if you say I do need to test it, you, sir, are a Nazi. Like that, you know how insane that is. So why is philosophy and social topics any different than science? We should always test our theories. Anyway, this mail is testing a theory. So let's get into it. It says, "Hello, Perch. There are so many comic creators creating new characters, and while so many people keep complaining, quote, oh, that is just another woke trash character, or another insult, or the other half are like, stick to those so-and-sos. Well, I think a lot of comic creators may have some motives of pushing agenda, but I don't think that's all. I think most comic creators are creating all these new characters in the hope that they explode and people love them and profit. They want this because they would get a cut of the profit for every appearance. Look at Bendis and Naomi. While it's easy to pick on Bendis, he isn't the only one. By the way, that's an interesting point in that some writers definitely get more heat for creating characters than others. The person here about, James Tinian, who the reader's about to mention, I was reading ahead, has also created a lot of new characters. And yet Bendis is like, wow, I quit. With Bendis, fans are like, why does he keep pushing his new characters on us? And it's like, they're all doing that to some extent. But anyway, let's finish the mail. But there is James Tinian the Fourth and his Batman run, and all these new characters, Punchline, and currently Steve Orlando and Somnus. Well, I think these these creators are for representation. I also think it all comes down to the zeros on the check. What do you think? No, I mean for sure, and I think that gets hand waved aside a lot. I think that it's very easy to say, well, this person's just trying to cram down a gay agenda down the throats of all the readers. But the characters that they're creating in a lot of cases is an attempt to cut in on that royalty. They're not paid enough. And so it's like, well, this is like playing the lottery or putting, money into a stock and hoping it pays off later. Now, in fairness, when a current character is changed identity, changed in some way, a royalty doesn't come out. So if you, for example, take, I don't know how Riri Williams works. I think part of the push to Ironheart is Riri Williams a derivative character or not. I suspect Marvel's lawyers would claim that she was a derivative Iron Man character, and therefore, not open to royalties. I don't know if I don't know if that would hold up or not. I don't know if the push to have Ironheart named that way would do it, or I don't know. But I would suspect, at least based on how I've seen other things play out, that Ironheart would not be viable for royalties, just like Jessica Cruz, Simon Baz is not valid for royalties. They're completely different characters, but they're considered derivatives of Green Lantern. If they changed Jessica Cruz to, I don't know, instead of calling her Green Lantern, they called her, anti-fear lady or something. I don't think that would change. I think the root of who she was, It's that, and I think the same thing is true with Riri Williams. I don't think she would be eligible, but I may be wrong. There's also a case where sometimes the publishers cough up some royalties as kind of a way to say, hey, we're not complete pricks here, and they'll give some money. But it is different. I don't know if somebody can confirm or deny. I used to be able to send notes to Bendis. I haven't heard from Bendis in a while, but I would love to know the answer to that. The challenge is a lot of creators, and I'm not saying this about Bendis. A lot of creators also tend to lie about this stuff, where when you're talking to them, you either get one of two interactions. You either get very aggressive, no, I'm doing great, I'm making tons of money, so much money, or I am broke as shit. You tend to get those two stories. And many times when I've asked about royalties, I get no, I'm getting royalties on all this stuff. Absolutely. No, I got another check. And a lot of creators will say this, current and former will brag about how much money they're getting, but they're not. Then you dig in and you're like, oh, they're making all that shit up. Very common. Anyway, I think that I do think that's a big case of it, and I do think the right way to think about it is it's writers in many cases trying to play the stock market. They're creating these characters, they're throwing them out into the public space. They're hoping that they catch. They're hoping that more than hoping they're catch, they're hoping that somebody over at Disney Plus will decide this is the perfect character to go into the show. I've had multiple creators reach out, multiple writers reach out and ask, do I know, hey, people at Disney? I do know some people at Disney. How will be a good method in order to almost like when you're applying for the Academy, you send a little, for your consideration with some of these characters in there. So like, okay, you're putting together the new Miss Marvel series. Have you considered kind of this very random, never went anywhere in the comics character or villain? Would you consider using them in the TV show? Because if they do, then instantly, then ka-ching, then the royalties start coming in. The answer is it doesn't work that way, and but it's like why people like Jonathan Hickman get some good money for kind of the Thanos's Black Order and certain other characters that appeared there. It works, and in a lot of cases that's what's going on, and the writers are writing what they know, and that's a factor. Is it the only factor? Of course not. There's a lot of things that are happening, but that is a factor that is important not to forget. Is that there's always an attempt to see if you can generate another revenue stream for yourself. And in many cases, because the page rate and the comics themselves are not profitable. I've said in recent videos, by the way, I've noticed multiple people. So I've had several different, not this channel. People have sent me videos from other channels. I know Zach did one. I know a couple others did one, talking about, finally, people are coming around and making the comment of like, yeah, there should be more money in comics. If there was more money in comics, you would get a better pool of people. So lots of people, that is one of the most hostile takes I give on this channel consistently. People come in and absolutely bitch. And I've had people actually say, this is why Zach is a better YouTuber than you are. And then he's given the same advice. And I see the same person who is like, you're a piece of shit on my channel. They're over there like, yeah, you've got a great point. It's like, ass. You ass. Anyway, this is where changing the business model in comics would make a big deal. And I do think one of the ideas that got thrown out there was, hey, take the current average running sale of comics. You have to exclude the variant sales, the number ones, the pops, the overships, the average running mean of a comic, and then figure out what bonus you would give if the comic exceeded that. So if for example, you are talking about the Avengers, Jason Aaron is on that book. It's selling, I think, around 65,000 copies, about what that's selling right now, and it's somewhere in that range. And if you said, all right, if the comic exceeds 75, you got to give a little window there of this bump, because fluctuation in market can cause different things to happen. But at the 75,000 mark, we're going to pay X royalty to you. You could do profit sharing. Profit sharing is complex from a tax and accounting standpoint. That gets very dodgy very quickly, and it takes away some of your abilities to market it and spread it. Because if something rolled in the door, like, hey, you could go and put this comic over in a loot crate kind of situation, then you wouldn't want to say no to that. But if you had a profit sharing model, then suddenly it would get anyway. That could get technically difficult to maintain. But basically, what you do is you say, hey, at the 75,000 mark, you start to get a commission, a bonus, points, whatever it happens to be. And then as at whatever the title exceeds, as it exceeds 75, if it gets to 100, 120, then we take the money and we split it amongst the creative team. And there's some way to kind of assess what, who gets what on the creative side. If you're bringing in a Mark Millar for the writer, then, that's a big name and he's a big draw. If you're bringing in Jim Lee to do the art, he's a big draw. So you got to figure out a way to have that kind of percentage of money go over. But it would be healthy. If we have to assume that the comic business right now is feeding IP for movies, and that's what it's intended to be, and that's what it's kind of resigned to. If that's what comics are, then do you care about massive profit on comics? Well, I don't believe that Marvel and DC do care about making a massive profit on comics. I think that they want it to be profitable, but I don't think nobody's saying we want to see 400% growth this year. Nobody's saying that. But if you put a program like this in place, then what you do is you put a lot of incentive and power behind the creators to, hey, achieve. And if you achieve, you make money. And that's going to be a lot healthier for the industry than, hey, if you happen to create a character that at some point Disney Plus adapts, then you might get an extra royalty check if you remember. That's a much lower and dumber incentive. And quite frankly, that just creates the wrong behavior. You think short term, all I need to do is create a character, put them on the page, and then I'm eligible for a royalty, as opposed to, hey, if I make this comic sell more and the run rate goes up, which is something that's going to happen over multiple issues. I can't think, one character, one page. I've got to think about, a dozen plus issues to actually have a run that's successful that brings my numbers up. It's a much healthier, better proposition. And I think that will attract better talent. It will weed out the lower bottom feeding talent that sits in the comic pool that does, for all intents and purposes, the least possible work in order to kind of set themselves up to play that lottery. Because I do think there's some of that goes on. Not all of it, but I do think there are some writers in comics that dislike comics. And I say this because I've heard people tell me this directly. They don't particularly like comics. They think it's beneath them. And they are in it purely to play the lottery, to throw a couple new characters into the mix and hope that some of them pay off and, they get that royalty check. They don't even like the comics they're writing. They're just hoping that they can, for them it's a safe bet. It's like I could do 6 issues and I can introduce 6 new characters and maybe one of them will take off and I'll get some money down the road and that's a game I'm playing. Somebody who says something like that is not somebody who cares about comics long term or wants to create a valid run. They're just hoping to, put some money on some stocks. That's the fundamental difference. And again, that is why, you got to put more money in comics. But I'm glad to see people coming around. It's very nice. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for listening.